Hello, hello, hello. And
Hey, what's going on?
Labbin. Shawna, listen, I don't know about you, but I am super excited about this episode today. I'm excited. I'm kind of fangirling out a little bit. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But, you know, today's episode, I think it will be impactful in so many ways. Not only is it a necessary conversation, it's so timely in the moment. Today's episode is called Rewriting the Script, Changing the Narrative in Diversity in Media. So let's get ready to collab.
That's right. All right. So I am so happy that I get to introduce this guest today because we go way back to our days in Brooklyn. I remember distinctly that we were at an outdoor screening for Color Boys, which is amazing. And just to see that project come to fruition and then to see where you are today. I mean, that storytelling right then. And I mean, that was just, it was really heart-wrenching. It was really what we needed. It was the voices that we needed to hear. And then to see how far you come and you get to continue she gets to continue to tell these stories. So I don't want to miss any of the accolades, so I'm going to put my eyeballs on real quick. I'm going to read a little something. Oh, no, my mic. Okay. I'm going to read a little something just because I don't want to miss any of the amazing things that our guest, Stacey Muhammad, is doing out there in the world. So Stacey is originally from New Orleans. She's a visionary filmmaker and celebrated episodic director. Stacey has brought her bold storytelling to hit shows like Alex Cross, which has had over 40 million views in the first 20 days. That is mind-blowing. And I believe you're up for a nomination for a DGA award, I believe. I did see that, which is, I mean, I can't say enough. And then you've also directed Queen Sugar, Bel Air, The Wonder Years, The Best Man, and the list goes on. I want to just say that you received praise by industry icons like Ava DuVernay, right, where she said your voice is clear, bold, and ready to be heard. And then you had Charles S. Dutton described for Color Boys as a marvel of cinematic craft and superb storytelling, as powerful as The Corner or The Wire. I mean, I'm gonna stop there, but there's because we're gonna get into this conversation, and I'm just happy that you're here with us so we can celebrate all the amazing things that you're doing. Welcome, Stacey, to Co-Labbin.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it, Shawna. Good seeing you. Thank you so much. All the support over the years is dope doing this. And just one small correction: I have not gotten a DGA nomination. You know, the things go out to say, hey, consider me.
Got it. Okay.
So they put those things out.
Got it. Okay. So let's fingers crossed.
Put it in the air. Put it in the air.
Put it in the air. That's right. Get all the awards, not just the DGA. Let's get some Golden Globes. Let's get all that.
All the flowers.
That's right.
Yeah. So we're going to get into our conversation now. I think what I really want our listeners to hear from you is where you started. Tell us about your origin story, right? The beginning of your career and why you're doing this.
Wow. Goodness. Well, I mean, I think I've always been an artist. You know, I was a dancer for many years, a ballet dancer growing up. So after high school, went to performing arts high school, and finished high school in DC, went to performing arts high school, finished high school, and went to Alvin Ailey. So I was at Ailey for a while, studying dance there. And then I had my daughter at 22. And I was like, I mean, just a graphic designer, like any type of art, whatever I needed to do to not have a job. I cannot go to work every day. I can't.
I understand.
My body was just like, I can't do this. I have, So at some point I had a pretty successful graphic design business, believe it or not. But I've always loved filmmaking and storytelling, grew up watching films, love Spike Lee, of like Purple Rain, like, these were all the earlier, right, things that I watched. And at the time, like, we weren't having these conversations around diversity and inclusion. And there were these groups of folks who were in DC, which is where I lived at the time, holding these workshops for Black filmmakers. Like, if you want to make it, and I don't even remember what they had done, right? But if you want to make industry, if you want to make it in the industry, like, these are the type of stories you have to tell. I would say, I'm not interested in telling those type of stories. So I was really lucky and blessed to meet Holly Garima, who worked at Howard University at the time. He did the film Sankofa. He was holding filmmaking classes at his location on Georgia Avenue called Sankofa. So my first directing, writing, and producing classes were with Professor Garima. And if anybody knows him, you know that those were lessons not just in filmmaking, but in life. I believe it took him 8 years to do Sankofa. You know, so there were people there who had a certain type of do for self mentality. You know, for me, picking up the camera was about like telling the stories of the people who were around me. You know, it definitely came from a place of activism as opposed to from a place of I'm trying to make it in Hollywood. So yeah, I just picked up a camera and started telling the stories. I went to film school in New York. Moved to New York to go to film school. I was in my early 30s at the time. So I was already what they would call a late bloomer, you know, in this industry. For some reason, stuff like that didn't really bother me. I went to film school, Digital Film Academy, graduated, and started, you know, doing what I was doing when you met me, which was pretty much documenting everything I could possibly document, from community events, doing photography, doing videography. Spent 15 years as an indie filmmaker. And in 2019, Ava called me about doing Queen Sugar, and as they say, the rest is history.
Wow.
History.
Wow, that's beautiful.
That is amazing. I mean, I think that, you know, just listening to you right now and not understanding your story and knowing your story, I should say. So at what point, or was there a point that you recognized how important it is to tell these types of stories and wanting, and then, you know, starting to want to tell these types of stories? And now, you know, we're in such a critical time that we, you know, I think all of us here understand, you know, why we need to do more of that, why we need more of that. So was there ever, what time and at what moment did you recognize how significant your work would be to our community and our culture?
I think recognizing how significant it could be was when I did the Sean Bell documentary in 2009. You know, again, that was a 10-minute film. And it screened all over the world. And eventually Sean Bell's family, you know, they became a part of the, you know, the talkbacks and the Q&As that we would have. And I think just like watching people's reaction, you know, there would be a lot of young Black boys in the audiences, because they were the really primarily the folks that I interviewed. You know, I wanted to talk to young Black boys about how it felt living in Brooklyn, knowing what happened to Sean Bell. And so I think when I realized like that film has screened all over the world, I was like, wow, this 10-minute film really did some work. You know, I think in terms of like knowing the importance of being a storyteller and telling our stories, you know, I mean, I think for me, it was just kind of like how I was raised. You know, I was born in a home where we read, you know, Toni Morrison and Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin. And, you know, like this was just, my mother had a library full of books that I read. You know, I became a Muslim when I was 15. I joined the Nation of Islam at 19. You know what I mean? Like, this is just who I was. Yeah. So me picking up a camera meant that I was going to tell those types of stories because that was just the type of political orientation and spiritual foundation that I had. You know, so I think I always knew. I wasn't really thinking about how can I maneuver in this industry and tell these types of stories in this industry necessarily. You know, I just wanted to tell the story. And then I think if you do good work, then opportunities open up for you. And so industry opportunities kind of started to open up. You do good work, you have the right connections, things come your way. And so I think at some point I started saying to myself, I want to be careful of what I'm doing and the stories I'm telling in this particular space, because I know how this space has been weaponized against people who look like me. So I think then it was like some real intentionality. What type of shows do I want to take? You know, being able to say to my reps, yeah, I feel comfortable with that, but I'm not comfortable with this. Right. But that came later on. Yeah.
And I think that's so important because a lot of times I think when you're an emerging, you know, a creative, you feel like you got to take everything. You can't say no to anything. So to be selective and to be successful is really rare. You're really forging your own path, which I love to see, and you're forging the path for other Black female directors coming behind you, which I think is even more important. So you're making this huge impact. And what I'll say about your, you know, you mentioned the 10-minute documentary. I'll never forget and I don't know the exact quote, but I always remember, you know, a sentiment that Malcolm X would share about the impact that media has on the hearts and minds of the people. And I know as being an activist, right, you see a lot of the work being done through protesting, through, people are in the streets, but I think it needs to happen everywhere, right? We need these stories to be told because, like you said, it can reach people globally.
Yeah.
So, just pivoting a little to Alex Cross, right? Because here it is. This is a story with a majority Black cast, right? Black actors. And I think I was just so amazed with the storytelling. And I was so, pulled in and excited that, I could relate to the characters. It was so nice to see like the connection between father and son, but at the same time, it was everybody's story. And I think that's what a lot of people are missing. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience on Alex Cross?
Oh, wow. Well, it's funny because I got the script. Well, before that, right, my rep hit me up and he's like, okay, show Alex Cross and I want you to meet with the showrunner, Ben Watkins. And so usually these meetings are a good 30, 45 minutes. I think Ben and I were probably on Zoom for a good hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. Wow. We just connected. I mean, I'm talking about a brother through and through and through and through. Like, so, you meet a brother, you meet somebody like this is just family. You know what I mean? We connected on that level. And so when I got the gig and I got to Canada and I got the scripts, I said to my reps, like, these are just some of the best scripts. This is some of the best material I've been given to direct. Because the truth of the matter is that, like they say, it all starts on the page, right? And sometimes you get something really amazing and sometimes you get something that's like, this doesn't really work on the page. How am I going to make it work? And, so anyway, Ben was great. And so, I got there, read the material, really excited about it, and really just came into the fold of an incredibly talented group of writers and producers, an amazing, amazing crew, right? And we already know in terms of what the cast is like, led by Aldous. So to me, it was just like all the ingredients came together. And I got really excited when I started thinking about, like, while we don't really see content with Black folks in it, primarily Black cast that looks like this, like really premium content. I'm like, I know who I'm working with in terms of this DP, Brendan Stacey, and how incredibly talented he is. Sometimes you got to be concerned about whether or not folks know how to like Black people. You know what I mean? There's so many things to take into consideration.
I noticed that. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because they're dark-skinned Black folks, and not everyone like.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing. I've been on shows before, and it's like, wait, what's up with the hair? You know what I mean? Like, why are these sisters looking like this? Like,
yes. Oh my God. Talk about it.
You know what I mean? It was just stuff like that just wasn't a thing on Alex Cross. Like, a lot of the production issues that you have sometimes just weren't like coming up. So I really had. I could focus all my energy on the creative, and Ben being who he is really collaborative and open to directors having ideas, and was really, the more you give him, the more excited he is and the more he opens up with it. So, again, I said before, like, sometimes folks see episodic directing as restrictive. For me, I don't. I'm like, I'll be able to do all the things I want to do, right, in my feature work, which is coming up. But I actually haven't come across a show, including and especially Alex Cross, where I had a creative idea and someone said no. So it was just the perfect mix of all the things. Again, starting with something that was great on the page, and it all came together beautifully.
First of all, I love that you shout out the crew, right? Because I feel like so many times crew is, just forgotten, and, working in film production, I feel like, I witness the work that they do, which is, I know I couldn't do it. That is not my calling. But I wanted to, it sounds like Alex Cross was the ideal situation for you. And I love that, because as a viewer, I think that came across for me. I didn't stop. I just binge watched that. And so I'm not surprised that it is as popular that it is. But so has there been a time for you as a Black female, and also with the story that you came from, sort of with your upbringing, has that ever been an issue for you leading, a project, directing, and being in a position of leadership and control in the industry?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for me, it's two things that are always happening. My creative journey to me is parallel to my spiritual journey. So you have to really use your voice as a director. And that was one of the things I kind of struggled with, like just comfortable using my voice, you know, taking up space. You know, I talk to my female friends a lot about like just how other folks just take up space, even space that's not their space. They just, you know what I mean? Even when they're encroaching on somebody else's space, they just comfortably space, right? You know, and so as a director, it's like there's space that you are supposed to take up. You know what I mean? So I've just been feeling my way through being comfortable taking up space. And that can be even more challenging when you know that there are folks that are there that don't want you there. You know, I've worked on projects before. I worked on a project in Calgary, Canada, and it was very clear we ain't some of them. Like we're not feeling you, right? And so when you have to, as a Black woman, stand before 40 people on a tech scout, many of whom are white men, and say, hey, this is what I want to do, and this is how I want to do it. When you have to be collaborative partners with some folks that don't necessarily want to hear your voice. Because, you know, bringing us in is one thing, but changing the culture and the mentality and the mindset and the ways in which this has been existing for as long as Hollywood has been a thing is something else. And I've never been one of those Black folks that was like, I need to be the first anything, because I'm always thinking about the trauma associated with being the first, with being the one who kicks down the door. Like, thank God for Ava DuVernay and Oprah Winfrey and what they did with Queen Sugar, because they provided a space and a table and an environment where we were allowed to come in and be ourselves and tell these authentic stories and get these amazing opportunities. But yeah, I mean, you know, by and large, I've worked with great people who are happy to see me, especially the actors. They see a Black female director coming in, especially one that knows her shit, right? Who has, you understand, who has a plan, right? Who understands the material and understands how to get it done, and who is collaborative and who's kind and who cares about the crew and who cares about the cast. You know, I've had a dream relationship with these folks, right? But of course, there have been times when I'm like, yeah, this is a part of what the old structure has been, and you just got to work through it. Which means for me, you gotta really know your stuff. And I don't even go in there feeling too pressured. I don't feel like I have anything to prove to anyone. Right? I got the job because you saw my work and you believe in my work. If there are other people around who kind of feel whatever, that's on them.
That's on them. That's right.
Yeah, that's on them.
I love that. And I think that it's important. Again, it's important for you to kind of, I think it's rare that you see people handle themselves in the way that you're speaking about, right? Very organic, very human, right? Just coming in there. We're here to do a job collectively. We're going to come together. It's creativity. So it requires that, right? It requires that. And sometimes when you're in this space where there's so much pressure, it's hard to bring out your best creative self. So the fact that you're kind of creating that space for the actors, for the crew, right? It's like you are paving a new way of doing things. We need more of you. We need more of you doing more projects and being in these spaces. Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, for me, it's like I've been, you know, I think because of my origin story, like my idea of success has been different than a lot of folks' idea of success. You know, for me, I said before, it's filmmaking work is an extension of my community work. Like this is work that I'm doing on behalf of my people, period, bottom line. And so I think kind of keeping that, knowing that, I don't even have to keep it in the forefront of my mind. It's just what I am and what is who I am and what I do. So I don't really have to keep it in the forefront of my mind. But there are moments when they are just reminders when I'm like, yeah, I'm here for a greater purpose. And that is, you know, I want the folks that are coming behind me to have an easier time. I don't want them to go through the things that, you know, some of the other women before them had to go through. So yeah, however I can create that environment, I'm committed to doing that.
I know we got like a snippet of your, you know, what you've done, but I know it took time to get there, right? It took a while. And I guess what are some of the things that can be done to make sure that more people like you are able to get these opportunities? Because I know it's not easy. Everyone's looking to, you know, they're doing their own projects now, which is great. There's a lot of independent platforms, but, you know, how can we get more Black female directors, Black directors in the chair there and these episodic?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. You know, it's a good question. You know, I think when it comes to like industry stuff, sometimes I'm like, I don't really quite know. You know, I
Yeah.
mean, I think for me, it's been about like, you know, just encouraging Black women directors to tell their stories. You know, I mean, literally, when you ask people to give advice and they say, or I say, do your work. And sometimes they're like, but is that enough? And Shauna, you know this firsthand, right? And I'll tell
Yeah.
this story real quick. You know, you had a lot to do with my first interaction with Malcolm D. Lee. So I did For Color Boys in 2013. For Color Boys was dedicated to a man named Teddy Van, who made the song Santa Claus is a Black Man. Teddy Van was the mentor for many young Black men in Brooklyn, New York. Teddy Van's son, I'm just giving you all like the quick little timeline, which
Yeah.
is all about do your work. Teddy Van's son reached out to me on Facebook and said, hey, thank you so much for dedicating this amazing series to my dad. And guess what? I just so happened to have gone him to college, Georgetown, with Malcolm D. Lee. I would love to connect you with Malcolm because I know you're a filmmaker, yada, yada, yada. He connected me with Malcolm. I don't even remember if Malcolm and I talked, but the first time that Malcolm and I had any interaction, Shauna, was on that panel.
Oh wow, yeah,
How
yeah.
you put me and Malcolm on the piano together. I don't even know how. I was like, how the hell am I on
That
the
was
piano?
a while
This is amazing. Thank you. Great. We made a connection. We stayed in touch. He showed some real interest in my creative voice. He would call me to say, hey, come sit with me on set barbershop. Fast forward 5 years later, I have an idea for a feature film. I talked to Malcolm about it. He's like, I love it. I'm on board. I'm going to EP it. We're going to make that movie. So maybe 3 years later, Malcolm hits up Tracy Oliver and says, hey, I know this young filmmaker. I want you to meet her. I end up doing 2 episodes of First Wives Club for Tracy. She says, hey, come and interview for my show Harlem. I end up doing 6 episodes of Harlem.
Wow.
Last season, I EP'd it, producing, directing it, right? So just that connection with Malcolm yielded all that. And now 2025, we're getting ready to go into production at some point next year with my feature film that Malcolm is spearheading as an EP.
Wow.
My point is that none of that would have happened if I hadn't done For Color Boys. None of it. And so even when you don't have the money, you don't have the connections, you don't have the this, you don't have the that, do your work. Right. Because it is your work that's going to open up the opportunity. And again, that work I did in 2013, the relationship I established with Malcolm then, 2025, and I also did an episode of The Best Man.
Yeah.
But you can't just...
And Love Life, which is one of my favorite shows.
And Love Life, right. Yeah,
Love Life.
Just walking up to folks saying, hey, I want to be a filmmaker. It's like, okay, great, cool. I pulled up on Robert Townsend many, many years ago, like, hey, I want to be a filmmaker. And then again, we're on set together doing The Best Man, however many years later. I'm like, you probably don't even remember me, right? But again, do your work. And it's hard, especially from a financial perspective, I get it. Don't focus so much on the industry. Do good quality work, especially now with the internet being what it is and social media being what it is. Do your work, put it up, ask for help, but ask for help, ask for assistance with the work that you have in hand to show someone, hey, I have this 8-episode web series that we funded ourselves. I'm interested in connecting with an EP, but that means you have something for an executive producer to come on board and do something with.
Right.
I think the way to get women in the spaces is just encourage women to, one, be healthy, mind, body, soul, and spirit. So we have people in those spaces that will tell the stories that will uplift our community and not tear it down. And to encourage these women to do their work. So for me, it's like the youth program that me and Wise Intelligent had many years ago, Intelligence, providing space for young people to learn how to tell stories, learn how to do short documentary films, the power of short content. Even now, like that 10-minute film I did in 2009, now we're creating content that's 2 minutes long because people's attention span is shot, right?
Yeah.
So just do your work and do good work. When I say lose to desperation, it's just from a universal perspective, like not the energy that you want floating around. Ava has said before, like she's like, I'll always be an indie filmmaker at my core because I'm going to get my work done regardless of who's going to help me get it done. That's the
I think it's the importance of telling our stories, right? Why do you feel like it's important to get our stories out there? I mean, I think we all know the answer, but I think more for our audience, right? For people who are listening and they're saying, well, what's the big deal? There's Black shows out there, there's Black movies, but they're not necessarily the stories that we all want to tell. We hear the same stories over and over again. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts around the importance of telling our stories, or any marginalized, population for that matter?
I mean, I think we're talking about people of African descent. We're just naturally storytellers. I mean, that's just who and what we are. We know the power of story. We know that story has so much influence over how people see themselves. When we're talking about the Black stories that exist, I mean, the issue is not about trying to police anything. It's about the fact that we don't have enough options, right? So if the white woman can be portrayed as the prostitute, no judgment, sis, do you, right? And so you can flip the channel and see her as the doctor. You can flip the channel and see her as the judge. You can flip the channel and see her as all these different ways in which someone can decide to maneuver and move in their lives. For the Black woman, you don't have all those different options. So for the young Black girl that's coming up and can't turn the channel and see the judge, and doesn't turn the channel and see the attorney, or doesn't turn the channel and see, the woman that's in love, and doesn't turn the channel, and all she sees is the drug addict or the prostitute or the people who have, had this type of struggle in their life, then that's the issue. It's not, we're not saying don't make the story, don't tell the story about the Black prostitute, but also tell the story about the Black woman who has the opportunity and the option to do all these other things, right? We know that they know and understand that if you put us in this particular box and give us one particular option for young people to see as a possibility for their lives, then we know that Hollywood has played such an integral part in advancing the ideas of racism and white supremacy. And I don't maneuver in this space not understanding that. Yeah. Never have and never will, which is why it wasn't a space that I was coveting. It's a space that I believe that I've been blessed to maneuver in and to work with other like-minded creatives, especially in this time when we have so many options for content to be, shared with the world. It is the time to link with other like-minded folks and say, hey, we understand how this space has been used. How can we carve out some of these other spaces that are willing? And then how can we build some of these other spaces so that we're not looking at anybody else's table and waiting for crumbs to fall off of? So yeah, I guess hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go off.
I think, this was so important to me because I think every day, what you said about being comfortable taking up space, that is just not about, what it is that you do. I see that in people, and I can't just say young people, and in the industry period, working in every position. It's just that idea of like something is given to me. You have to be grateful just to be here versus knowing that you're here not by mistake. You're here because you bring a skill and talent into the room. You bring a perspective into the room that has to be heard. And I understand that when you're at a table, you better take up space at that table, because then they start to feel like you have nothing to say. And that is the worst thing that you can possibly do. It's really death to your career. So I tell people, when you get in that room, you make sure that your position is felt. You make sure you speak up, and don't think about who you're going to offend by your position. Because I've been in rooms where people have just said things that are off the wall, and they don't look like us, and so people sort of brush past it. But when we're in the room, it is necessary for us to make sure that we are speaking intelligently about our position and giving our perspective on things. So I appreciate you saying that, because it is something that we all deal with, in every sector, in every place within, corporate America, industry, or whatever it is.
Yeah, I mean, and I think to the whole point of like, I agree, the It Gets Greater Later movement, which Bevy Smith is doing, which I love. I mean, I don't remember how old I was in 2009, but I wasn't 20 anything, you know what I mean? I just turned 50. Like, this is literally like an amazing time. Hello.
Great. I have to stop for that.
Breathe past that.
Should I bring that back?
Looking good.
It's an amazing time, right? And so I think, it's always a mind trick for me, because I'm like, as a Black woman, like you're in this space and it's like, yeah, I need to really stand up for myself. I need to use my voice. I need to take up space. I need to but it's also like, wait a minute, like what world have I been in? You know, it makes all the sense why I would kind of have some trepidation around those things. And I see in my own personal life how I'm not taking up enough space. And I see in my own personal life how I'm not speaking up enough for myself. Right. And then I'm expected to be in these spaces and it's a whole lot of like stuff we got to do to really show up.
Unlearn. We got to unlearn, because that, like you
Yeah.
said, that behavior, it really does permeate in every aspect of our lives, right? With our families, at work. I mean, I wasn't in the industry in my previous job. It was manufacturing. And I felt the same way. And sometimes I was the only one in the room. You know what I mean? And at the same time, I was not shy. I'm like, you know what? I'm in this room. I have something to say. I'm going to say it. I'm not going to say anything unnecessarily, but if I feel like I can contribute, that's why I'm here. I'm here to contribute and to participate. I'm not going to get caught up in like, oh my God, you know, like sometimes people are afraid and fear has no room there, or else it's going to stop there, and there's not going to be opportunities for those coming behind you, unfortunately.
But it's also system designed, right? So it's more than just the unlearning, because all of these spaces are designed for there to be some fear, some you're you don't really matter. I mean, it's designed that way. So just really understanding that as well, that it's not such a personal thing, it's not any it's not necessarily us. This is sort of the space that we are trying to thrive in a place where it's not a equal and fair playing ground.
Yeah. It's a gradual process. The last thing I'll say, I remember working on an episode of one show, which is probably like my third or fourth episode of TV, and I was so nervous. And I was working with a white woman AD, and she was horrible to me. She was horrible. She wanted to be a director. And I didn't know nearly as much then as I do now. I mean, I knew, again, 15 years as an indie filmmaker. TV is it has some, and so I was really nervous, and she was horrible. And at some point I really spoke up for myself, because and I was like, yo, I don't know what your issue is. To the producers but so like the way I show up now, I've gotten to that point. You know what I mean? When I say the artistic journey, the creative journey is parallel to the spiritual journey, because there's so much spiritual work that I've had to do to just really feel more comfortable in my body and take up that space and say, I'm here because spirit intended for me to be here. This is mine. You know what I mean? And I think when you spend that type of time in an indie filmmaking space and you build an audience, Shauna, I think sometimes my success feels like community success, because people have been on this journey with me all along, and they know who I am. And I think they trust me and they trust my voice. And when they see Stacey Muhammad directed it, they know what to expect. They know that there's nothing in there that's toxic for us, and that someone sat behind that camera with an intention and a mission and goal in mind to take care of Black people. And we just need more people in these positions that's less focused on whiteness, less focused on how white folks are going to see us, view us, feel about us, and just sit behind that camera and know I am here to tell a good story, to be a decent human being, which I already am, and to take care of Black folks in a space that we are usually not taken care of. And Cross is one of those spaces where it was easier to do because Ben Watkins and the writers were already on that. This is Stacey Muhammad. You're listening to Co-Labbin. Check it out.
Well, Stacey, I've learned so much more about you. I was already a fan, as I said, because I do love your work. I respect your work. And I know you mentioned here and there that you have so many, some things coming up. So can you tell us about some of your future projects coming up?
Wow. Well, the biggest thing is the feature film that I have in development with Malcolm D. Lee's company. Is a feature film called The Return. You can't say too much about it in terms of the plot, but
I get
it. We've been working on it for 7 years.
Wow.
And we're there. And it's something that we will shoot here in New Orleans and the outskirts of New Orleans. So I'm incredibly excited.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
It's an ancestral story. It's my family's story. It's a New Orleans story. It's a story about, Black folks. Yeah.
Is Cross coming back?
It's season 2. We've actually shot season 2 of Cross.
Really? Oh wow! I can't wait.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's all I can say about that.
Okay.
So
New information here on Co-Labbin.
will
Well, I
be
want to
back.
encourage everyone to get out there and make sure you watch this one this season because it is superb. The storytelling is superb for sure. And I know are you coming back as an episodic director for Harlem as well, right? And do you have any other projects going on?
Yeah, so Harlem will be back, I believe, mid-January. I think our third season of Harlem will be back.
Nice.
So wait, to find out what's next with that. And so, yeah, I mean, I have a few feature film projects, kind of, transitioning more into the feature film world now. Definitely have some other episodic stuff.
Right, we need you there. We need you there, girl.
But now
we need you there.
it's time to step in, and I'm doing some indie projects. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's going to always be my core, my root. And so being home in New Orleans, like a lot of New Orleans stories that need to be told. I have a series called Vous Carré with one of my producing partners, Nicoy Banks. The company called Uptown Filmworks. I have another production company called Gamali. I have a production company with Mark Lamont Hill. We have a project called Black in the Holy Land. That will be Mark's directorial debut.
Really? Wow, that's awesome.
He spent a tremendous amount of time in Palestine, and so it is about what it's like being Black in that region, which we could only possibly imagine what that experience is like for those beautiful people. We've been working on that since like 2018 and getting close with it. That producing relationship that I've had with Mark for many years, from For Color Boys and all the projects that we've done that he's funded and helped me, maintain my career as an indie filmmaker. We continue to do that work together. So
that's beautiful. Love it. Yeah, and I remember he came out when we did the screening. Yep, and he was there talking about the support and everything. So it's glad to see that you guys are continuing to do great work together.
Yeah, Mark's great.
You're working, girl.
Yeah, that is so great. All right, and then where's the best people can find you, follow your work? Where do you want to direct people?
I have a website. I don't update it enough, but StaceyMFilms.com, and I'm Stacey Muhammad on all the platforms. I'm probably on Instagram more than anything. But yeah, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, everything is Stacey Muhammad, so they can follow me in all the places. Yeah.
Nice. And so I just want to have one more question, and then we can wrap it up. So what message can you leave our aspiring Black creatives? Like I know earlier you said kind of like tell your story, but I guess if there's one piece of advice that you can leave.
No, she said do the work, do your work.
Do the work. Yes, this is true. Do the work. Absolutely. Which I think is underrated, right? We want it to instantly happen. I have this idea, it should instantly happen. A lot of stuff going on in between, but what information would you leave for or advice would you leave for our Black creatives out there?
Take your time. Study your craft, know it. If you love it, study it, watch as much television and many movies as you possibly can. Know your stuff, what I mean? Really, really understand the filmmaking, the cinematic language and how to use it. And take care of yourself and take your time. I don't think we talk enough about taking your time. Everything is a rush. I need to do this before I'm 30. I need to do this before I'm 40. You actually don't. You know what I mean? Just, literally, I tell people all the time, I would not have been the director at 30 that I am at my age. Wow. So much of directing is life experience. So much of it is being able to go to an actor and not just help them find the different colors of the scene and the different options, but a large part of it is being able to say, hey, this is on the page, but this is the subtext. Like, this is what's underneath it. Like, this is what's really being said. You mentioned Love Life, and I tell this story real quick. Working with Jessica Williams on an episode of that show, and what was on the page was she's breaking up with her boyfriend. What hit me was this woman who wasn't allowing herself to be in love, who was sabotaging herself. And that's the conversation I had when I went to her. Like, I know this is about you breaking up with your boyfriend, but what's really happening here is that this woman will not allow herself to experience the love that she deserves. And that hit her. And the tear that dropped from her eye in that take was the take that made it into the final cut. When I worked with Patina Miller on Raising Kanan, incredibly talented, I mean, rock, come on, oh my God.
Oh my
And
God.
we're both mothers, you know, so
Yeah.
to be able to sit there and have a conversation with her and that scene that she's going through this stuff with her son, and just to be like, yes, it's like, you know, so much of directing is about the life that you have lived. And so let yourself live life.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know we need money. I know we need, I get it, but don't get so caught up on that need that you don't allow yourself to accumulate the life experiences that's going to inform your art in a way that's really going to be way more transformative than it would have been if you hadn't lived that life. So take your time, calm down, relax, know that what is for you is for you and it cannot be kept from you. People don't like you. You know what I mean? What's for you is for you. Believe that and move in your life and in your work with agency. And trust that God's spirit, whatever you call on, is going to give you what you need. That's it.
All right, so you guys know every episode we walk away with one small thing that you can do, one small change that you do either personally or professionally. And actually, I'm going to mention kind of two things because this was such an enriching conversation. It wasn't just about being creative, it was about being spiritual and how those things are connected, which I so love to hear. We don't hear it enough. So, two small things. One is, if you are a creative out there and you're hesitating, something's holding you back, you're holding yourself back, we challenge you to just do one thing, even if it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, something to get your creative juices flowing and let the world see what you're working with. Let them see your creativity. So that's one. And the other thing I'll say is that if you're not a creative, but you're in a space where you can help another, you can pull a brother or sister up and you can allow their talent to shine in the space that you're in. And we encourage you to do that, right? Because it takes a village. We can't, no man's an island. We can't do it by ourselves. It reminds me of this African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's where we are with it today. So let's go together. Thank you for Co-Labbin.
I know this one is a tough one to work with right now because I'm getting so much information.
I know. I'm like looking at you. I'm like, you hear this?
I know.
All right.
I know you're inspiring Yvonne over here.
Yeah. You know, Stacey, you are where I want to be.
But we have to stay connected. We have to stay connected, please.